Guys, Dr. Cam here. Welcome to KINSTRETCH. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a chiropractor, born and raised here in Sudbury, and been in practice for about almost 6 years now. I'm essentially here to offer you a different perspective with respects to movement and mobility training. And the KINSTRETCH practice, I hope I make clear that the KINSTRETCH practice that we do today, A, is going to require a lot of work, and B, is designed just to help you continue to do the things that you love to do. It's not designed to replace basketball, yoga, martial arts, whatever movement modality that you love to participate in. I encourage you to please continue to participate in it. But we want to make sure our bodies are prepared for those loads of physical activity before we actually do it, such that you don't have to eventually see myself or Kim due to a physical issue. So before we get started in the actual practice, there's just a few little bit of housekeeping details that we want to take care of. Within the practice, there are a few themes and engagement principles that we utilize. The first principle is this idea of irradiating our body. So irradiation essentially just means trying to tighten your body as tight as you can, squeezing every muscle fiber in your body before you actually do a motion or movement. And it's required for multiple reasons. The first reason is it allows ourselves to be honest with how much mobility we actually own. Meaning, if we think about motion of the shoulder, so for example, if I think of shoulder flexion, how much can my shoulder actually flex independent of any other part of my body at the joint level? Meaning, in clinical practice, we often see people who come in with shoulder pain, neck discomfort, who are doing a lot of overhead work, and their ability to shoulder flex often stops about right there. Meaning they often start to compensate with other parts of their body to try to cheat shoulder flexion. I don't want your shoulder to rely on other parts of your body to do shoulder stuff. I only want the shoulder itself to do what a shoulder needs to do. If it doesn't, then things eventually over time are going to arise. So that's why we irradiate. We irradiate our body, again, just to get nice and tight. And so we're just going to go over that right now. So we'll have you standing up. You could do this by yourself. You can do this with a partner. If you have access to a lacrosse ball, a tennis ball, any object that you can hold onto will help and make it that much easier. So, with irradiation, I just want you to take that ball or object, place it in your hand. And I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to think of that ball in your hand. And I just want you to think about utilizing your hand muscles to squeeze that ball at about 80% tension. Just utilizing your hand muscles. Now feel that tension and increase that tension up into your forearm, keeping your hand tight. Squeeze your forearm muscles nice and tight. Good job. As you squeeze your forearm muscles with your hand muscles, now increase that tension up your elbow into your bicep and your tricep. Squeeze that tension up your entire arm that's holding the ball. I know, it gets harder. Now take that ball, keep it in your hands, crush it with your hand. All your forearm stuff, all your upper arm stuff. Take that shoulder blade and bring it back and down. Think like you have oranges in your armpit and you're trying to squeeze oranges to make orange juice. Get that lat nice and tight. Now your entire right side is nice and tight. I know, it's work. Now I want you to do the same thing. Keep that tension in that arm with your opposite arm. Opposite hand, nice and tight. Opposite forearm, nice and tight. Opposite Bicep, tricep, nice and tight. Opposite scapula, nice and tight. Opposite scapula, back and down. Both arms are nice and tight. Squeezing those lats. Now carry that tension into your chest. Squeeze your pecs nice and tight. Brace your belly up nice and tight, like someone's trying to punch you in the stomach. Squeeze your butt nice and tight. Squeeze your thighs nice and tight. Drive your feet through the floor like you're pushing down on the gas pedal. Your entire body's nice and tight. Hold that for 3, 2, 1, relax. Good job. So, you probably felt that at the start, holding that ball with just your hand stuff, it was pretty easy. But as we continued and increased that contraction throughout your forearm, into your bicep, into your lats, into your chest, into your core, into your lower extremities, into your glutes, your quadriceps, your feet as well, probably felt a little bit harder. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm already sweating. We do that, again, to make sure other parts of our body aren't compensating. Again, getting back to the lower back shoulder example. If I come into shoulder flexion, I want to make sure my humerus is doing the work, my glenohumeral joint is doing the work, rather than me cheating with my lumbar spine or my lower back to cheat extension. I only want the joint itself to do what a joint needs to do. Joint independence is the name of the game, rather than joint interdependence. And if you have questions with that, by all means, just shoot me a message. So that's the law of irradiation. You'll hear me throughout the practice saying, irradiate, get tight, squeeze, shoulder blades back and down, butt tight, stomach tight. That's what I mean. Okay. The second concept is this example of what we're doing with KINSTRETCH is essentially trying to teach our brain to understand what the muscles across a joint feel like. So going back to our elbow, I want to know what the muscles on this side of the joint feel like, and I want to know what the muscles on this side of the joint feel like, right? So if I have good control, my ability to understand all this stuff will allow me to flex my elbow with good control and understanding. And now if I control and understand what all this stuff feels like on the backside of the joint, my ability to feel elbow extension is going to be that much more smoother and graceful. And we essentially utilize a few acronyms to understand what this stuff of the joint feels like and what this stuff of the joint feels like. So within the practice, you're going to hear me utilize these concepts called PALs and rails. As chiropractors, people in healthcare, we like our acronyms. They make our paperwork that much easier. PALs stands for progressive angular isometric loading. Rails stands for regressive angular isometric loading. So what we're doing with our PALs contraction is we're trying to, if we think of the angle of our elbow, if we try to progress or open this angle, I need to activate all of this back stuff to squeeze myself open. Now, if I want to squeeze all of this other stuff, I would be calling it a rails contraction, trying to close this angle down, meaning flexing my elbow. I hope that makes sense. So PALs contraction, I'm trying to open an angle. Rails contraction, I'm trying to close an angle. It's okay if it doesn't make sense. The big take home I want you to think of is with PALs, you're pushing away. With rails, you're pulling stuff closer to you. Again, if I'm thinking about my elbow joint and I want to create a PALs contraction, I'm going to do an isometric loading, meaning no movements occurring. I'm going to block myself and create a pushing action against me. Now I'm trying to do this, but I can't because my hand is blocking me, meaning an isometric motion or a contraction. Isometric essentially just means I'm contracting my tissue without any motion or movement. And we do that to teach our brain to understand what all this stuff feels like on this side. With rails, it would essentially be the opposite. I want to close this angle with an isometric load. I would essentially pull stuff closer to me or towards the joint with an isometric load. I hope that makes sense again. Again, if you have questions, by all means, just ask. Think pails, you're pushing, rails, you're pulling. That's all it is. All right. So before we actually get into the actual KINSTRETCH practice, just one little thing is our warm-up. Our warm-up that we're going to use, again, another acronym, is called CARS. CARS stands for Controlled Articular Rotations. Essentially, they're just joint circles, but with a little bit more specific intention to them. We want to do joint circles, especially for this class being the hip, due to the fact that the nature of a joint is formed in a cyclical manner. The fiber orientation of a joint occurs more cylindrical than linear. So we want to have principles in place to communicate to that cyclical nature of a joint. So again, CARS, controlled articular rotation. And we'll go through that right now. So you're going to come into a quadruped position, meaning hands and knees onto the floor. Now, if you remember that irradiation that I talked about, before we actually do it, I want to make sure my hands are screw driving through the floor. You could think of your left hand turning a jar of pickles to the left, right hand turning a jar of pickles to the right, getting those shoulder blades back and down, bracing your belly tight. If I'm moving this leg through my car, my opposite leg is going to be planted into the floor nice and tight. So, to essentially think like we're making a joint circle with our leg and our femur, you could think like you're tracing the biggest circle you can with the tip of your knee. But, as I said before, we only want the hip joint, the femoral acetabular joint, to do the work. As I come into hip flexion, watch me. I want to make sure I'm not rounding my spine to get more hip flexion. I only want the hip to do the work. As I come in and then out like a dog peeing on the fire hydrant, I want to make sure the outside of my hip is doing the work, not my lumbar spine. I could cheat more motion, but again, it's not occurring at the hip. It's occurring at the lower back. No. As we come into hip flexion, as we come into hip abduction out to the side, the hardest one is hip internal rotation. So I want you to think like your femur is a rotisserie spit, and we're kind of rotating that hip socket internally, meaning we're spinning that femur internally. So I'm going to come into hip flexion, hip abduction, freeze right there. The outside of my ankle is going to come towards the ceiling as I turn my femur internally. I know, it's supposed to be hard. From here, the knee is going to come towards the midline, all the way. Then I'm going to pull my knee back to the starting position. That's one rep. All right? So what you saw was the hip doing the work. As I came through, I wasn't just lollygagging without my entire body. I was getting the hip to do hip motion. All right? So we'll just do 2 reps per side. I'll be easy with you. It's the first time you've ever done this, so we'll just take it nice and slow with control. Again, one thing I forgot to mention is as we move through the practice, we really want to be as slow as we can. So again, going back to the elbow because it's pretty easy to conceptualize. As I move my elbow, I could easily just come into flexion extension, right? Not much tension, not much control, just nice and easy, loosey-goosey. When we're practicing and moving through our ranges of motion, whether it be our cars or KINSTRETCH practice, we kind of want to move relatively like we're moving through mud or molasses. So rather than just lollygagging in, we want to take that idea of irradiating our body, and I want to think of molasses. And I want to think like I'm squeezing everything at about 70% intensity as I slowly move through that range of motion. I want to do it as slowly as I can. Slowly as I can. There's a difference between doing that and just doing that. We want to use that high level of intensity to prepare our tissues for the work that we want to do. So we're going to do that with our cars. So at about 60-70% intensity. Slow enough that you're taking your time with it. If you need a time aspect or a measurement, you could think 10 to 20 seconds per rep, per circle. All right. So again, we'll start with our left hip. I want your hands planted down through the floor, thinking like you're pushing down on a gas pedal with your hands. I want you to turn your left hand to the left, turn your right hand to the right. Corkscrew the floor like you're opening up a jar of pickles. Elbows are straight, shoulder blades back and down. You're going to pack some air into your belly. Think like someone's about to punch you in the stomach and you're bracing your belly tight. Opposite foot, toes are tucked under, squeezing that leg nice and tight. Now, what you're going to do, slowly, with control, coming into hip flexion. I know it's supposed to be challenging. Then we're going to slowly come out to the side without the lumbar spine dumping. I only want the hip to do it. From here, the outside of my ankle is going to come towards the ceiling. Sole of my foot comes towards the ceiling. Inside of my knee comes towards the midline. Squeeze it slowly. That's one rep. One more. Come into hip flexion. I know, if you need to take a break, you could pause. Well, I'm not going anywhere. Hip flexion. Hip abduction, or think like a dog peeing on a fire hydrant. Outside of my ankle comes towards the ceiling as I spiral my thigh internally. Inside of my knee comes towards the midline. And then slowly into hip flexion. Just feel your hip. And shake it off. Yeah, I know. Here's the cool part. I want you to stand up. And I want you to move that hip around. Just haphazardly, think like you're just making a haphazard hip circle. Now, relax. Compare that hip that you just did your cars on to the hip that didn't do anything. Might feel a difference. It might feel a little bit looser. It might feel a little bit lighter. And that was just 2 reps. Okay, opposite side. Okay, and if you don't feel a difference, that's okay. This is your first time practicing. Practice makes practice. Every time we do something, we want to do it with intention. Whether or not we feel it right away, it just takes time. All right? Next hip. So again, opposite leg that's not going to move. The toes are tucked under. Shoulder blades are back and down. Palms are flat, pushing into the ground like you're pushing down on 2 gas pedals. Shoulder blades are back and down. Big breath in. Radiate our body nice and tight. Pack that air into your belly. And you're going to slowly come into hip flexion. Pull your knee into your armpit as far as you can. As far as you can. As far as you can. Freeze right there. Now, coming out to the side like a dog peeing on the fire hydrant. Squeeze, 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 out to the side, out to the side. It doesn't matter how high, just as long as your hip is working. Freeze right there. Outside of your ankle comes towards the ceiling. I know, this is the yummy part. I know, I know, I know, everything tight, stay tight. Knee comes towards the midline. Keep that knee bent all the way, all the way, all the way. Pull that knee into hip flexion. Pull that knee into hip flexion. Pull it, pull it, pull it, pull it, all the way into your chest. Freeze right there. Knee out to the side, out to the side, out to the side. Freeze right there. Internally rotate, internally rotate. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Knee comes towards the midline. Knee comes towards the midline, towards the midline, and then back into their starting position. Whew, I know, that was just 2 reps per side. Excuse me, my screensaver. There we go. So we're going to actually start with the KINSTRETCH practice. And again, today is just going to be a focus of hip external rotation. And we want to use hip external rotation because, as most of you are probably going to work with Alana and Kim, we're definitely going to be working on those external rotators because they help us lift and jump for rebounds. So if our joints understand what external rotation feels like, everything else is just going to work that much easier. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into a 90-90 position. So I want your right leg forward. And what I mean by 90-90 is your femur is going to be 90 degrees relative to your pelvis. And your shin is going to be 90 degrees relative to your femur as well. So I have a 90-degree angle from my tibia to my femur, 90 degrees from my femur relative to my pelvis. Okay. From here, we're going to start our KINSTRETCH practice now. I want a nice tall spine, meaning I don't want to roll my lumbar spine forward. I want to roll this pelvis forward. I like to think like my pelvis is like a bucket of water, and I'm tilting that bucket forward to create extension in the lumbar spine. From here, what I'm going to do is, keeping my chest nice and tall, I'm going to lean forward until I start to feel tension on the backside of my hip. And from here, we're just going to relax, staying nice and tall. There's no force, there's no tension. We're just relaxing, taking nice deep breaths in and out. Again, the tension is designed to be felt back through in your glutes. If you feel a pinchiness in the front of your hip, you've gone way too far forward. I just want you to open this angle. We don't want pinchiness on the closing side of the joint. Tension on the opening side of the joint is okay. Pinchiness, no, we don't want that. And so we're just going to take deep breaths in and out. Like Crystal will talk about, taking deep breaths through the belly, through the diaphragm, is something that helps regulate our stress response. And we want to utilize that when we're stretching, just to calm down that tension. And we want to calm down that tension. The more we're able to self-regulate, the more when we're in a game and when we're on the free throw line and there's 5 seconds left and you're down by 1 and you need to hit your free throws, the more you could self-regulate and just control your nervous response to the moment requires practice. The best way to practice is through the belly breath. So taking deep breaths. And on a 2 count or a 3 count or a 4 count, exhale, I want you to double it. So if your inhale count is on a 2, your exhale count's on a 4. Inhale count on a 3, exhale count on a 6. Whatever works for you, but it gets better with practice. So we're going to inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, 1, 2, 3, pause, exhale, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll do this last one with you. Inhale. Exhale. Give me one more. And you might notice that the tension is dissipating through in here. Again, I don't want you to go forward. I just want you to stay where you are. Last exhale. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to begin to work. We just opened up that hip from a passive stretch. Now we want to make it active to teach our brain about what all this tissue feels like in this position. If we can teach our tissues about what the tissue of a joint feels like, my ability to use that joint throughout its entire range of motion is going to be more regulated, more prepared, regardless for the thing that I want to do. So I want you to imagine that for our pales contraction, remember, pales is pushing away, rails is pulling. So for our pales contraction, we're going to think of everything from the outside of our ankle through the outside of our shin, the outside of our femur, is pushing down through the floor from 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, 100%. The time duration for that 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 is going to be 4 sets of 5 seconds each. So 20% for 5 seconds, 40 for 5, 60 for 5, 80 for 5. The last set of 100%, you're going to hold for 10 to 15 seconds as best as you can. Note, during your pales contraction, you might cramp. That's totally okay. It's actually a good sign, meaning you're working. I like to call cramping neurological confusion, so don't worry about it. After we do that pale set of pushing down, then we're going to do a rail set. Again, rails is pulling stuff closer towards the midline, meaning I'm trying to pull all of this inside stuff in through my core as well to pull me deeper into a stretch. You could think like this thigh is on a scale and you're trying to lighten the load off of a scale. It's not going to come up, but you're trying to activate all this inside tissue to pull you deeper into your stretch. Okay? So, we're going to start with our pales contraction. I want you to, again, screw drive your hands through the floor. Left hand turning a jar of pickles to the left, right hand turning a jar of pickles to the right. Shoulder blades are back and down. Good irradiation as we did at the start. Big breath in, pack that air into your belly. Now your back leg is pushing down as well. Now, pales contraction set 1, 20% through the floor. Go for 5, 4, I'm doing it with you. 3, 2, 1. Increase 40% through the floor. I know. Tall spine, tall spine. 2, 1. Increase your pales contraction 60% through the floor. I know. It's supposed to be challenging. 2, 1. 80% through the floor. Try to drive that leg down through the floor. Stay tall, stay tall, stay tall. 2, 1. Big breath in. Irradiate your body nice and tight. Here we go. 100% through the floor. Go. 100% for 10, 9, 8. I know. 7, 6, 5. I'm here with you. 4, 3, 2, 1. Slowly turn down that contraction. Slowly turn down that contraction. Slowly all the way to 0. Now, rails contraction. All the opposite stuff. Trying to pull you deeper into your stretch. Think about lifting that thigh up towards the ceiling. Pull your belly to your spine as you lean your chest forward. I know. Slowly. We're not rounding down. We're leaning forward as hard as you can. Squeeze it. Squeeze it for 5, 4, 100%. 3, 2, relax. Good job. That was your first pales and rails contraction. Congratulate yourself. And just take deep breaths in and out. If you're wondering what's going on here, What is this crazy dude making me do? There's a method to the madness. We're working on our flexibility, on our mobility. Like your jump shot, like your conditioning, like your strength, it all requires work. Mobility, flexibility is no different. Just take deep breaths in and let it go. Deep breaths in. No force, no tension. You're just like a puddle of water or an ice cube that's just melting. Or whatever happy thing, think puppies, ice cream cone, whatever happy word you could think of that can relax your brain. Think babies, toddlers, whatever cute little thing that you can relax into. I know. Okay. So what we're going to do now is the actual KINSTRETCH practice is the motions that we just did back and forth. We're going to hinge ourselves up with slow controlled engagement. Then we're going to hinge ourselves down with slow controlled engagement. So follow me for the first one. Just relax there. Just watch me. So if I want to come back to our starting position, I don't want to do it lazily, if that's even a word. I want to control myself up slowly with controlled engagement, meaning my shoulder blades, good irradiation, shoulder blades are backing down. I'm squeezing my glutes nice and tight. I'm squeezing my lats nice and tight. I'm thinking about 100% driving this leg in through the ground as hard as I can. Carry that contraction up my femur, up my erector spinae muscles to squeeze myself up. Squeeze myself up. Squeeze myself up. Squeeze myself up. Squeeze myself up slowly. Now reverse. Pull myself deeper. Pull myself down. This is active. Active. Slow with control. Squeeze myself deeper. Squeeze myself deeper. And reverse. Do this one with me. Push the floor away from you. Push the floor away from you. Squeeze. Think like you have 1,000 pounds on your back and you're trying to drive yourself up through the floor. Chest is nice and tall. Squeeze. One more. Pull yourself down. Pull yourself down. Squeeze. Pull. Pull. Squeeze this leg up towards the ceiling. Pull your belly to your spine. Tall spine. Tall spine. Head is coming forward. Squeeze. 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 Relax. Whew. I know. It's supposed to be challenging. If you're not feeling anything, please let me know in the comments or email me because I want to know what's going on. If you did feel it, awesome. If you didn't, it's okay too. This is our first time trying something new. It's going to take practice, just like shooting your free throws. To get more proficient at it takes practice. To get more mobile takes practice, takes work. Deep breaths in and relax. And deep breaths in. Deep breaths out. Yeah, get weird with it. Deep breaths in. Deep breaths out. The breath is your friend when you learn to use it properly. Deep breaths out. And this is not any crazy woo-woo stuff right now, right? This is all based on science. Your coaches can tell you what LeBron James does. I'm sure many of you are fans of his. He just doesn't play basketball. He takes care of his body through strength, conditioning, nutrition, mobility, flexibility. He's a known yogi. He practices meditation. All these things that you have at your disposal through the team at the NLBA are literally here for you to provide those services. So it's just taking that action to practice. Okay. Unfortunately, we have 2 legs. We have 2 hips. So we need to do the other one. So I'll be nice to you. You're going to slowly push yourself up, slowly push yourself up, slowly push yourself up. Now we're going to do the opposite side. So, I know. Shake off that leg, shake it off. You're going to feel all sorts of yumminess into that hip. But here's where it gets pretty cool. I want you to stand up now. Stand on up and just move that leg around. Just move that leg. Feel how it feels. You're going to feel some sort of muscular soreness into the hip. Sorry if you can't see me. This is my first time recording stuff, so I'm still learning my bearings. But you might feel that that hip feels a little bit lighter. It's definitely going to feel sore into the hip due to the fact that you just squeezed it pretty good. But feel that. Now compare it to your opposite side. Sensation that you might feel as this side might not be as sore, but it might feel a little bit heavier on this side that we didn't work compared to the one that we just did. So, meaning we're going to do the opposite side. Same concepts of our pails and rails, just a different body position. Meaning, again, 90-90 position, 90 degrees of my femur relative to my hip, 90 degrees of my tibia relative to my femur. Nice tall spine. You might feel that your range of motion of one hip is different than the other. That's totally normal. Don't worry about that. Everyone has a side that they're more dominant on. Think of your layups. Most people are, if you're right-handed or left-handed, you probably are better doing a layup on one side than the other. It takes practice to get more ingrained to keep them even. So, nice tall spine. Again, no rounding in that lower back. Nice tall spine. And again, I'm going to lean my chest forward. No work right now, just we're relaxing, opening that window in that hip before we start to carve out some strength into that hip. And it doesn't matter about how far you go or how far I go, your range of motion is yours. Just like if we were to shoot jump shots together, you would be probably more proficient at it than I am. I haven't shot a jump shot maybe 15, 20 years, so something I didn't practice. If I don't practice it, I lose it, the ability to do it well. Same thing with range of motion. This is something I practice, so I might have a little bit more. But good thing is you're young, you're doing the work now. Let's open ourselves up, develop these good habits. I'm just taking deep breaths in and out. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Again, if you're starting to feel that tension dissipate on the backside of your hip, I don't want you to go forward. I want you to stay where you are. If you're feeling pinchiness in the front of your hip, that means you've gone too far forward. So I want you to open this angle a little bit more. Enjoy this moment because you know what's coming. Nice and relaxed. Whatever happy word you could think of. Relax, ice cream cone, puppies, whatever can just lessen the tension in your mind into your hips. About 20 to 30 more seconds before we start our pails contraction. Again, pails is we're thinking about this hip and pushing all of the stuff on the outside of the hip, outside of the femur, outside of the shin, into the floor. You're pushing that stuff away from you. 20% for 5, 40 for 5, 60 for 5, 80 for 5, 100% for 10 to 15 seconds. And then we're doing the reverse, our rails contraction. We're thinking of all the inside stuff, pulling up towards the ceiling as we suck our belly towards our spine, pulling and squeezing ourselves deeper forward. As we come deeper, I'm not rounding my spine. My chest is tall and I'm going forward. In about 10 seconds. Deep breaths in and out. Big breath in. Trap that air in your belly like someone's about to punch you in the stomach. Back leg is pushing down. Arms are screw drive through the floor, turning your hand to the right hand to the right, left hand to the left, elbows straight, shoulder blades back and down. Tails contraction set 20% through the floor for 5, 4, 3, 2, increase 40% through the floor. 2, 1, increase 60% through the floor. I know. Squeeze, squeeze. 2, 1, 80% through the floor. I know. Stay with it. Stay with it. 2, 1, big breath in. Radiate. Everything nice and tight. 100% through the floor. Squeeze for 10, 9, 8, chest tall. 7, 6, head up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stay tall. Slowly turn down that volume. Slowly relax it all. Stay nice and tall, but no work, no work, no work. Now the opposite tissue, rails contraction. Think about lifting your leg up towards the ceiling. It's not going to come up. Carry that contraction up into your quadricep, in through your core. Pull your belly to your spine. As your chest comes forward, squeeze. Pull yourself deeper into that stretch. It doesn't matter how far you go, just as long as you're slowly with control squeezing. Try to squeeze that leg up towards the ceiling as hard as you can, 100%. Shoulder blades back and down, chest tall, belly tight, shoulder blades tight, butt tight, everything for 5, 4, 3, 2, relax. Deep breaths in, deep breaths out, and relax. With your relaxation, depending upon how far you go, which doesn't matter, it's your range of motion. Mobility is your training. If you're pretty far down, I want you to take one thumb up like that, place it on the floor. Opposite hand is going to wrap around that thumb, and you're going to use that as a kickstand just to relax your head down. If you're not this far, which doesn't matter, you could place your elbows onto the floor, use your hands against your head as a kickstand, and just relax, relax. There's no work, there's no tension. We're just going to do 2 more hinges, down and up, then down and up. Then we're going to close off with some cars like what we did before. We'll do it a little bit lighter, not as hard, and then we're done. Okay. It's hard on me too, guys, not just you. We all feel it, regardless of what your mobility, flexibility is at. Everyone should be, in some way, shape, or form, be working. You guys are doing great. It's the first class. All right. Now we're going to do our hinging. So again, as I said, we're going to push the floor away from us to slowly, with control, come up. And then we're going to squeeze all the inside stuff to pull ourselves deeper into our stretch. That's 1 rep. Then we're going to do 1 more rep, pushing the floor away from us, radiating our entire body nice and tight. As we come up, again, I like to think like I have 1,000 pounds on my back. And I have to drive and squeeze all of my muscles on the backside along my spine to pull myself up. As I come up, I'm not curling myself up. I'm coming up nice and tall through my spine. You might see a difference. Okay. So I want you, with your lead leg, to generate a contraction 100% through the floor. Push your leg through the floor, back leg through the floor, shoulder blades back and down. Everything nice and tight to slowly, with control, drive ourselves out of our stretch. Squeeze all the back stuff. Squeeze all the back stuff. Squeeze all the back stuff. I know. I know. I know. All the way up. Tall spine. All the way up. Reverse. Pull ourselves deeper. Pull ourselves deeper. Pull ourselves deeper. It's supposed to be challenging. You're doing great. Pull ourselves deeper. Pull ourselves deeper. Pull ourselves down. Pull ourselves down. Last set. Push the floor away from you. Push the floor away from you. Shoulder blades back and down. Squeeze all of your muscles. Everything nice and tight. Irradiate, irradiate, irradiate. Last one. Pull ourselves down. Pull your belly to your spine. Lean that chest forward. Over your thigh. Over. Squeeze. Squeeze. 3, 2, 1. Relax. Whew. Kickstand your hands. Relax your head. Take a deep breath in and out. Good job, you made it. There's no more work. If that felt difficult, congratulations, because it was supposed to. Deep breaths in, deep breaths out. Deep breaths out. Just relax your mind. Let your mind know it's done. The work is done. Again, throughout this time that we had together, if things didn't make sense or the cues that I was giving didn't make sense, please understand there's nothing wrong with that. Every time we try something new, there is a learning curve. So even KINSTRETCH, even the irradiation, even the cars, the pails and rails that we just did, it requires practice to get better at. We're just trying to teach our brain about what that deepest layer of that body, the joint, is designed to feel like as it moves. Excuse me. When I understand my joints better, my filters for my movements are more efficient. More efficient movements, more prepared movements. More prepared movements, the less likely I'm about to get injured. Okay, so we're going to slowly come on up. I'm feeling it too, guys. I'm feeling it too. It's supposed to be challenging. So we're going to do 2 more cars on both sides. We're going to change the cars a little bit in terms of the intensity. So when we first did our cars today, we did them probably at 70% intensity. We were working pretty good, right? So this time I want you to dial the tension down at about 20 to 30%. Nothing too crazy hard. So again, if we're using our reference of our bicep, again, 70%, I'm squeezing. 30% to 20%, I'm going slow. Engaging enough, but taking my time with it still. We want to do these cars at the end of our KINSTRETCH practice, kind of like saving our work on the cloud, so to speak. The cloud being our brain this time. Excuse me. So we're going to get back into our quadruped position, so hands and knees. Again, the irradiation, we're looking at 20-30% maximum. But again, the time we take to complete our circle is going to be the same. So take it slow, not real hard engagement, but nice and slow. So shoulder blades, nice and easy back and down. Opposite legs still planted. Opposite toes still tucked under. And, 20-30%. You can see I'm not shaking as much, but I'm still going slow. Teaching my brain about what it feels like to have hip flexion. Then again, a dog peeing on a fire hydrant. Outside of your hips, squeezing towards the ceiling. Then I'm going to spiral that femur internally, get the sole of my foot towards the ceiling. Inside of my knee comes towards the midline. That's 1 rep. 1 more.
Knee comes in to hip flexion. Pull that knee in towards your chest. Nice and easy. Knee out to the side. I'm going to spiral that femur internally. Out, sole of my foot comes towards the ceiling. Knee comes towards the midline. And relax. Good job.
Last 2 reps, and then you're free. Okay. Opposite foot planted, arms are straight. Pickle jar opening to the right, pickle jar opening to the left. Screwdriver arms into the floor. Again, 20-30%, nothing too crazy. Belly is nice and engaged, and I'm slowly coming into hip flexion. Hip abduction, dog peeing on the fire hydrant. Make sure that lower back isn't moving. Outside of the ankle comes towards the screen as the sole comes towards the ceiling. Knee comes towards the midline. Last rep. Knee comes into hip flexion. Just take your time with it. You can even go slower if you want. These are just guidelines, recommendations. Outside of my glute is squeezing. Knee comes towards the outside. Femur, like a rotisserie spit, turns internally. Sole of my foot towards the ceiling. Knee comes towards the midline. And pull it down back to our starting position. Good job, guys. So typically, when I direct these classes, I usually have a model that I'm working with. As you can see, it was just me today, and I was sweating pretty good. So if you felt it like it was challenging, understand you're not the only one. Mobility, like strength training, like cardiovascular endurance, agility, speed, stamina, to get proficient at it requires work and effort. And you just did it for the first time. So give yourselves a break. It's understandable if it was challenging. If you have questions, concerns, by all means, Coach Kyle, Coach Alano have my information. Reach out. I'm here and available. One last thing, obviously, during the times that during our environment right now with COVID and social distancing, things are a little bit confusing for all of us. But one of the coolest things that we have is technology. It allows us to connect. If you do have questions, to allow yourselves to get more direction about the KINSTRETCH practice, by all means. We're all here for you. I'm here for you as well. So with that, I thank you and enjoy your Sunday. All right, guys. Take care. Peace.